Hello and welcome to the MBOM podcast, where you will learn to master the business of yoga with guests from around the world who have experienced becoming successful yoga teachers, studio owners, and much more. Now, here's your host, Amanda Kingsmith.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the MBOM podcast. Today on the podcast, I am super excited to be joined by Ariel Garten. And Ariel is probably one of the most interesting people you'll ever meet. She's a psychotherapist, a neuroscientist, a mom, a former fashion designer, and the female founder and visionary of an amazing and highly successful tech startup, Muse. And if any of you are like, I think I've heard about Muse, but I'm not sure exactly what it is, you probably have heard of it. Muse tracks your brain during meditation to give you real-time feedback on your meditation, guiding you into the quote-unquote zone and solving the problem most of us have when we start a meditation practice, which is that we sit down and we feel like we're totally all over the place, which many of us are, and there's nothing wrong with that, of course. So Muse lets you know when your brainwaves have actually got to that phase of relaxation, when you're really getting the benefits of meditation. And one of the reasons that I am super excited to have Ariel on the podcast is because we were able to dive into the science of meditation and talk about why meditation is important for our brains and bodies, as well as some of the major benefits of a regular meditation practice. We also talk about how we're able to start a regular meditation practice and what some of her top tips are for that. And then, of course, being the business geek that I am, I picked Ariel's brain about the business side of co-founding Muse, what it was like to actually create this company and to create this product, to market it and to sell it and to grow it to how big it is today. So I am super excited to dive into this interview with Ariel. But before we do that, just a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of the podcast is brought to you in part by Offering Tree. When you're a yoga teacher and you're trying to build your digital presence, it can be daunting. First, you might need a website. There are a lot of great tools for building websites like WordPress, Wix, and Squarespace. Then you need a way to email your students. Again, there are tools for that, like MailChimp and Constant Contact. But that's another account to pay for and a password to remember. Then you need a way to schedule and register your students. Again, there are tools for that. But it's another account to create and pay for and another password to remember. Oh wait, how do I integrate my scheduling tool with my website? If you're going crazy, I totally get that. So instead of putting all of this stuff off for another day because it's too daunting, let me tell you about a better way. Offering Tree set out to make creating your digital presence fun, easy, and affordable. With one account, you can create a website in minutes that has your schedule built right in. They also have email marketing tools to collect email addresses, send newsletters, and automated emails to your subscribers. It all works seamlessly together with one account and one subscription. To learn more about what Offering Tree can do for your digital presence, visit offeringtree.com/MBOM. Offering Tree has been supporting MBOM for over a year now, and I not only love the product and service that they've created, but I also love the people. I'm a big fan of supporting small businesses because I'm a small business myself. Small businesses supporting other small businesses is probably one of my favorite things ever, and it's really cool when I get to hop on a partner meeting and I get to talk with the co-founders of this product. As well, Offering Tree is providing special pricing for MBOM listeners. So be sure to head over and visit offeringtree.com/MBOM to receive your discount. Once again, offeringtree.com/MBOM. This episode is brought to you by Be Yogi. If you are in yoga teacher training, a full-time teacher, or a part-time teacher, Be Yogi has the best rated yoga liability insurance to keep you covered in the event an injury happens. Teacher training students can get full coverage for just $25. And for the MBOM audience, they're offering an exclusive deal for $20 off professional coverage. That's just $139 per year if you teach part-time. Go to beyogi.com/MBOM to make sure you get this discount. That is beyogi.com/MBOM. And if you're not in the market for yoga insurance, they also publish 2 articles per week about the business of yoga. I'm on their newsletter because of how great the content is, so I definitely recommend that you subscribe too. If you are a yoga teacher who is uninsured or considering switching providers, I 100% recommend BeYogi. Again, to get the exclusive $20 off MBOM discount, head on over to beyogi.com/MBOM. Well, welcome to the podcast today, Ariel. I'm really excited to have you here with me today.
It's my pleasure to be here, Amanda.
And where are you joining me from today?
From Toronto, Canada.
Oh, amazing. So you are currently experiencing an ice storm then?
Accurate. Correct. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not in Canada right now, but I'm originally from Alberta. So I've been hearing all about the polar vortex there and the ice storm in Toronto. So
you know all about cold. I really admire people from Alberta because you guys know how to handle winter. I had a friend from Alberta just wander through the streets wearing just a pair of jeans and a top. And I'm like, what's going on? She's like, I'm from Alberta. This is nothing.
It's because winter's so long, it becomes like March and we see like consistent 5-degree weather and we're like, oh, we can basically wear shorts now. Like spring's here. But no, I shouldn't take credit for any of that because I'm currently in Panama and it's like above 30 Celsius and I'm totally weak when it comes to the cold now.
Well, thank you for sharing some of the sunshine there with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sending more your way. And so there's so much that I'm excited to dive into with you, but I wanted to start with just a little introduction about you. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself, a little bit of your background when it comes to, Muse and just what you were doing before Muse?
Sure. So my background is varied. I grew up deeply imbued in the arts and the sciences. My mom was an artist, so making things to me was really critically important and creating experiences that let people feel what life was like and be excited about the act of living. My mom did these massive, large-scale oil on canvas portraits, which were filled with color and life. Like when people saw them, they would say, like, wow, they're joyful, they're inspiring. So to me, I always grew up in a world that was surrounded by beauty, in which we tried to create joy, in which, my mom did things that were inspiring every day. So to me, art was critically important, and art was a vehicle through which we could create experiences that would transform the way that somebody saw the world. And at the same time, I was also really into science. In high school, I had a initial job in a research lab when I was about 17 years old. I excelled in sciences. There was an early biotechnology program in my school in the 90s. So I was literally doing DNA digestion and synthesis when I was 18 in my classroom, and then going and teaching other teachers how to do it at different schools. So science was really fundamental to me. And to me, both art and science were ways that we could see how the world worked. You could literally see differently when you looked at a piece of art, and you could understand how the world fit together through the lens of art. And through the lens of science, you could also understand how the world worked, how things interacted, why they were the way they were, and then potentially also recombine them to create new things. And so I went to university for neuroscience. I was also super into fashion. Part of my art got channeled through the art of making clothing and creating experiences on the body and color and shape and form through fashion. I ultimately moved from science into neuroscience because I get really fascinated with the brain and how it allows you to perceive the world. Then I opened my own clothing design studio. And along the way, got trained as a neuroscientist and then got trained as a psychotherapist, closed my clothing design company for psychotherapy because I really wanted to more deeply understand the mind and how it worked. And I began collaborating with a man called Steve Mann, Dr. Steve Mann. He's actually one of the inventors of the wearable computer. And he had this early brain-computer interface, BCI device, where by putting a single electrode on the back of your head, we could track your brainwave activity. And then we could use the shift in brainwave activity to program stuff that would happen around the room. So my art and science life started to merge together. And we were creating concerts where you could literally make music with your mind. As you shifted your brain state, we would detect that shift with the electrode on your head. And then we would program sounds in the room that would follow the shifts in your brain. So as you became more focused, for example, the volume would go up like do 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 do. As you relax, the volume would go down. Do 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 do. And as I started to work with these, I sort of stood back and said, this is mind blowing. We're interacting with the world directly with our brains, and people need to know about it. So I formed a startup with my friends, Chris Amony and Trevor Coleman. And the three of us started to work with this technology and figure out what it would become. And ultimately recognize that as we were teaching people to focus and relax, we were teaching them much more important skill than controlling, sound or lighting in the room. We were teaching them to understand what was going on inside their mind and to manage their own internal state. And from there, we recognized that we could actually apply this technology to a really important ancient technology that helps you manage your mind and understand what was going on inside. And that was meditation. And that most people, when they try to meditate, don't understand the process of their mental state. And we could use Muse to make that process, or the early technology to make that process really straightforward. And thus Muse was born. We were able to actually track people's brains during meditation, which is its own incredible story. We literally sat on mountaintops with gurus tracking their brain as they went from state to state in order to understand what happens in the mind during meditation sensitively. And from there, built the tool that's now known as Muse, which gives you real-time feedback on your meditation to let you know when you're focused and when your mind is wandering, and to help you start or enhance your practice.
Wow, that's incredible. And I'm curious,
Thank you.
I have so many questions.
It was an amazing ride, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, the fact that you're blended art with science is so awesome. And that you had a fashion design business is so cool. So there's just so much good stuff there. But to keep us relatively on topic, for those people who don't know kind of how Muse works, can you talk a little bit about what it's monitoring and what that actually looks like when somebody's using it?
Sure. So Muse is a brain sensing headband that helps you meditate and actually also helps you fall asleep. It's basically like a little Fitbit that tracks your walking that sits on your wrist, but Muse is a headband that goes around your head and it tracks your brain activity during meditation. And the metaphor we use is your mind is like the weather. So you're actually listening to the sound of your mind while you meditate. So when your mind is wandering, you hear it as stormy. And as you are guided back to focused attention, it quiets the storm. So Muse is able to give you real-time feedback during your meditation. You hear what goes on in your mind while you meditate. And then after the fact, you get data, charts, graphs, scores that show you what was going on in your mind and help you build your metacognition, your ability to understand the process of your own thinking and make better choices about it. And so Muse has sensors for the brain. Muse 2 also has sensors for the heart, the breath, and the body. And then we just released a new device, which we can talk about a little bit later as well.
Awesome. And the new device is for sleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. So much good stuff with that. And so with the meditation side of things, can you walk me through the science of meditation? Like what happens to our brains and bodies when we sit and become conscious of what's going on in our minds and why it's something that's actually good for us?
So that's an amazing question because there is so much that happens in your mind during meditation. So meditation is a process where you're shifting your brain activity. And then you're also, through shifting your brain activity, shifting what happens in your body. But we'll start with the brain. So you have this area in the front of your brain called the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain responsible for planning, organization, and your higher order processing. And so as you age, your prefrontal cortex actually thins. However, if you're able to maintain a long-term meditation practice, you can maintain some of the thickness of your prefrontal cortex even as you age. And this is the work of Dr. Sarah Lazar at Harvard. She, in one of her studies, had a 50-year-old who had the prefrontal cortex thickness of about a 25-year-old. And meditation's able to thicken the prefrontal cortex because it continues to work it out really effectively. So one of the things that you do when you meditate is you are increasing your attention. So you might, for example, hold your attention on your breath. When your mind wanders, you notice that your mind has wandered, and then you make a choice to return your attention back to your breath. So meditation, in some of its forms, is really intensive attention training. Intention is the domain of your prefrontal cortex. Another aspect of meditation that is the domain of your prefrontal cortex is your metacognition, your ability to rise above the situation and see what goes on in your mind. So in a focused attention meditation, You put your attention on your breath, your mind wanders, you notice it, and instead of following your wandering thought, you choose to come back to your breath. When you do that, you're exerting your metacognition, your ability to observe your own thinking, rise above it and see it, and then make a different choice about it. And so there's this kind of dynamic in your brain where it's as if the prefrontal cortex is kind of the wise parent that's able to observe what's going on and make better choices. And the amygdala, which is further back in your brain, kind of like the child who's freaking out, who needs to learn to be regulated. So your amygdala is the part of your brain responsible for fight or flight. It is the thing that responds to danger in your environment. It's the thing that might see, a fire or a snake and then give you that predictable response in your body where you feel a little start and your heart starts to race and you feel a surge of energy and you feel a sensation of fear. And that sensation of fear and that surge of energy can be incredibly useful when there's real danger around. But in today's modern environment, our amygdala, instead of reacting to fires, which are now generally just nicely in fireplaces, if we're blessed to be in a part of the world that doesn't currently have a big fire, or snakes, instead of our amygdala reacting to these things, our amygdala now reacts to things like, oh, she might not like me, or oh no, I have a wrinkle in my pants, or what's that person thinking about me? Am I not good enough? And so our amygdala is constantly searching through the world for danger, hyper-reacting when it doesn't need to, and taking our body off track and causing us to feel or believe that we live in an environment that is unsafe and scary, when in reality, most of us are blessed to live in environments that are extremely safe and extremely supportive. So in meditation, this is me going off politically for a second here, but coming right back, in meditation, your prefrontal cortex is able to rise above, see a truth of the situation, and actually send a message to your amygdala to downregulate it. So it might say, like, you might be stuck in traffic, and the first thought is like, oh, now I'm stuck in traffic, I'm going to be late, this is awful, and your amygdala starts firing. Well, your prefrontal cortex can step in and say, it's okay, it's just traffic, we'll get there eventually, the person will wait, you will be fine, and downregulate the amygdala's activity. So in meditation, what we see is actually strengthening the prefrontal cortex and a downregulation of the amygdala through the process of practicing long-term meditation practice. And you can even see in an MRI of a long-term meditator. In a short-term meditator, you can see a decrease in activity in the amygdala. In a long-term meditator, you may even be able to see a decrease in the size of the amygdala. So it's almost like there's the relationship between the parent prefrontal cortex and the child amygdala, where you're able to calm and soothe and regulate, and actually respond effectively to the truth of a situation rather than the hyper responding emotional reaction.
Wow. Yeah, that's also interesting. And is there science on like how frequently we need to meditate in order to see those types of benefits?
How long somebody should meditate for before they see benefit is something there's not a ton of research on. But from some of the neuroscience studies, there's one study by Dr. Sarah Lazar, and there she looked at individuals who had been meditating for 8 weeks with an MBSR protocol. And in just 8 weeks, they were able to see an increase in the density of their gray matter. So simply 8 weeks actually led to a change in the brain itself. In another study by Dr. Eileen Luders, she looked at the aging of the brain relative from long-term meditators to non-meditators. And there she was able to see that long-term meditators had brains that looked, on average, 7.5 years younger. And she defined a long-term meditator as somebody who had meditated for 5 years or more. So, a small amount of investment can lead to changes in the brain. Long-term investment has the potential to lead to some significant changes in both your brain and your life.
Wow. That's amazing to hear. And something I'm curious about is obviously meditation's a big part of yoga, but I think even for a lot of yoga teachers and practitioners, it can be hard to have this regular practice. So I'm curious if you have any tips for starting a regular practice. How do you get started, making our brains stronger?
So the key to meditation is to do it and do it regularly. So during the active yoga, you are meditating if you're applying your brain properly during the process. So if you are, following your breath pattern, if you're putting your attention on one thing, if your mind wanders, you choose not to follow that wandering thought and you come back to the one thing that you're attending on. That is a beautiful focused attention meditation practice, even during the active yoga. In Shavasana, some people aren't only sort of feel like they're meditating once they get to the Shavasana. And for some people, Shavasana is just letting your mind wander through all the things, which is not meditating. Simply relaxing is not the same as meditating. Simply lying there with your eyes closed is not, and letting your brain do what it wants is not the same as meditating. Meditating is a directed process of the breath and or body. But if in Shavasana, you are putting your attention on your breath, if you are noticing the process of your mind, if you're making choices about that process as you go, then that's a meditation practice. Also in Kundalini Yoga has literally, says it has over 1,000 different meditation practices. And those meditation practices are different forms of breath and body work, typically breath work, or ways that you move your hands, your breath, your eyes to form what can be an incredibly powerful meditation. So, within the yogic tradition, there are lots of different ways to meditate. If you're looking to establish a, more traditional focus, like secular focused attention on the breath practice, which is what a lot of the science is based on, otherwise known as a shamatha practice, the best way to do it is to find the time in the day when it works for you. So everybody always wants to know, should I meditate at night? Should I meditate in the morning? How do I meditate? When do I meditate? The best way to do it is to find a time that will be a cue for you to meditate. So for some people, waking up in the morning and then meditating as part of their morning routine, because people have relatively set routines, is a great way to build the habit because it's now built into a part of your routine. For a yoga practitioner, it might be that at the beginning or the end of a yoga practice, you choose to insert an intentional 5 or 10 minutes or even 20 minutes of meditation. So it's now built onto a routine that you currently have. For me, I meditate every single night. I meditate many times throughout the day, but I also always meditate every single night before I go to bed. So I know whatever happens, I have that time when I'm in bed where my body is cued to do a meditation practice. And in that case, I never miss it. And of course, once you start meditating, the skill that is built, which is mindfulness. So many forms of meditation build the skill of mindfulness. Mindfulness is then a practice that you do throughout your entire day. So you become more mindful of your thoughts, feelings, sensations, and the environment around you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those are great tips for getting started. And I'm curious, since you created Muse and then, use the product as well, how has that helped you kind of like develop your meditation practice and then also, I guess, like advance your meditation practice?
Dramatically. So prior to having Muse really built or created, I was somebody who knew meditation was good for me, who even I was practicing as a therapist. So I would teach other people to meditate, and I sucked at meditation. Whenever I would sit down to meditate, my brain would bounce all over the place. I would have a million thoughts. I kind of didn't want to even get rid of my thoughts. I was like, oh, but all this thinking is good for me. It's stimulating. It's, thoughts are great. It's creativity. And I was just a terrible meditator. And it was in the process of building Muse that I was finally able to understand what meditation felt like. I describe it like my first kiss moment. Prior to my first kiss, I would hear all of this stuff on the radio about falling in love. And it'd be like, why is everybody always singing about love? Like, I hear it's great, but like, what is this love thing? And then I fell in love and I had my first kiss. And then I listened to the radio the next day. I was 15 years old in the car. And all of a sudden, I was like, this love thing is amazing. Now I get it. Now I get why everybody sings about it. Now it makes sense. So Muse for me was like that moment with meditation. When I finally started doing it, I was like, oh, this is what I should be doing in my focused attention practice. So this is what meditation feels like. This is the shift that I get. This is what's supposed to go onto my mind. Okay, now I get it. And Muse has now given, like tens of thousands of people that same experience of understanding what they could be doing inside a meditation practice that will then give them the benefits of meditation. It's at the point where I've actually now met multiple meditation teachers. And I asked them, how did you start meditating? And they said, using Muse. So that was like kind of shocking to me.
Yeah, that's amazing though. That must be like so cool to hear after spending so much time. I mean, learning about the brain, studying, creating this product, getting it out into the market, all that stuff.
It was pretty crazy. I never expected having that moment. And we launched first in 2014. So it's now been, 5.5 years in market. So it's long enough that somebody could have started meditation with Muse, caught the bug, loved it, became a meditation teacher themselves, and then I run into them at a conference or somewhere else. It was pretty mind-blowing.
Hey yogis, we're just taking a quick little break from the podcast to talk about PunchPass. Are you looking for inspiration as we begin the new year? Today I want to tell you why studios around the world love PunchPass studio management software. Charlotte has found that selling her passes online through PunchPass has helped her cash flow endlessly. And online pre-registration has meant that she always knows how many clients will show up for class. Dan says simply that PunchPass is just so easy for people, and it makes him and his business look incredibly professional. Marquita says that the team at PunchPass was attentive to her, which she really appreciated. She says that if she had a question, it was going to get answered. Laura introduced PunchPass's memberships so she can automatically collect payment from her clients. She has been amazed at how much energy, excitement, and growth her business has experienced as a result. Amanda was totally overwhelmed with the other software that she was using. She needed something more simple, and she could see that PunchPass seemed to get it. She found it quick and easy to move from one software into another, into PunchPass, and she loves how PunchPass provides her with usable information at her fingertips. Head on over to punchpass.com/MBOM to read more stories about people who have transformed their businesses with PunchPass. And you are invited to try PunchPass for free for 2 weeks and see for yourself how it might work for you. Once again, it's punchpass.com/MBOM. Okay, back to the episode. Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like that's a good natural segue into talking a little bit more about kind of the business side of Muse. I'm curious, like after you and the people that you developed it with had the actual like product, like, or actually backing up even from there, after you had the idea, what was it like to actually bring this product into fruition and actually have something that's like, okay, we can sell people this thing now?
Very long and very difficult, but it never felt either of those things because we were so driven by the thought that this could happen and should happen. So, we had the idea that Muse could be a meditation tool. We'd already built some of the early technology, because we thought we'd use it for something else. And then we recognized that meditation was the killer app. And we'd go in and pitch to VCs. So the company initially was just me, myself, and Trevor. It was the three of us. We had two friends who kind of joined, one from MIT, who kind of joined us to be engineers. Then we got this crazy project at the Olympics. And from there, we expanded to 25 people. We totally burned ourselves out by doing this Olympics project. We then had to rebuild the team. And that was the point where we were like, okay, what is this going to be? And at that point, that was the point where it became clear that meditation was the path forward. And so I had to assemble a team, and Chris, my co-founder, was our lead engineer and CTO. So he assembled his tech team. Trevor took care of sort of marketing and operations. I took care of the business management, even though my background was as a neuroscientist, but my family background is in business. So I just had that entrepreneurial bug. I could just sort of see it. And, we had a lot of interns at first who were doing things just for the sake of learning. We had no money, and I sort of just poured all of my money into it to do whatever we needed to do. And then, people would see it and they'd be like, this is amazing. And so we had a lot of positive momentum. And I just had this driving sensation that this is what we need to do and this will work. So I joined our local kind of incubator accelerator here called Mars. And they taught us a lot about how the business should run as a startup. This was 10 years ago, before startups were what they are now. Mm-hmm. I started in 2009, 2008, 2009. And then they taught me how to pitch and how to pitch for investment. I went forward and I pitched early investors and got a couple people on board who believed we could do it and loved the idea and could like see the drive and passion we had. And from there, it moved forward step by step. We had to learn how to do everything. We had to learn how to do manufacturing in China, but that was fine. We found somebody who'd done it before. We hired them. They managed the manufacturing in China and told us what to do. We needed to learn how to do logistics and shipping. It's fine. We found somebody who'd done it before. We needed customer care. Same thing. Chris could handle the engineering. We had electronics design. It was a very complex puzzle, but we took it step by step. We always brought in the people who knew what they were doing. Like I was never shy about reaching out to lots of people to say, could you give me a little advice on how to do it? Could you direct me to somebody who we could possibly partner with or hire to bring this forward? And piece by piece, we built the team, which is now 70 people. We built the product, which is now, ships worldwide in 5 languages. And we built the validation to it. Now there's over 200 published papers using Muse. And we, built something that actually works. And I think we had the passion to do it because it was so important to us to bring a device to market that was going to help people meditate. We knew if we could get more people meditating, the world would be a better place, period. And it was also that drive and vision that would allow other people to come on board with us and say, okay, this is like totally crazy, but I can kind of see how it makes sense and I can believe in where you're going, and let's strengthen each other together.
Wow, that's so inspiring to hear. And just, it's amazing like how much success you guys have had over the last, probably looking back 10 years ago when you first started, it must be hard to like imagine where you are now. Like, did you ever think about getting to the point where you are like right now with, now having launched another product and being in 5 languages all across the globe?
So yes and no. When you're an early startup, you're always encouraged to have the 5-year vision. And I was so optimistic. I always believed the 5-year vision would be true, but the 5-year vision could have never actually encapsulated what this is, and where we are now and what we're doing. But you always need to believe that it's going to be amazing, and believe it's going to be great in 5 years. And actually, now that you're saying it, this is the first time that I recognize that it actually is 5 years later. This is actually the 5-year vision coming to life.
Which is amazing. Yeah. It's so cool.
Yeah.
And so one of the things, absolutely. One of the things I'm curious about is that like, you spent, I guess like 5 years kind of developing it, and then you get the product and you start putting it out to market. What was that like initial marketing phase like? Like, what did you guys do to get it out there so that people could start trying it and using it and learning from it and that sort of thing?
So for us, the initial marketing phase, we did an Indiegogo campaign, and that was pretty successful. And this was really before Facebook ads were big, but now today the de facto is Facebook ads and using Facebook as a marketing channel and Instagram as a marketing channel. Instagram is not as successful as Facebook. Facebook is quite successful for us. Back then, it was more about Google AdWords, which today don't really drive that much. And it was about advocacy. It was getting people early on who used and loved the product to talk about it, and create videos around it and share those out. It was also about a lot of on the ground communication. So we'd go out to conferences or like-minded festivals where we could go and we could demo it, and so people could actually experience it and then share their experience. That was a little bit before everybody would take a picture of everything and put it on Instagram, but at least at that point you had some Facebook communicate. You still had Facebook, and you still had people talking about it and kind of virally spreading the word or purchasing right on site. And early on it was really much more about one-to-one, or me standing on stage, one to a stage of people. And now it's a lot more about digital, both because the digital tools are more powerful now, and because the product has enough credibility that when somebody knows it, they're like, oh yeah, this is real. When we started, you really had to show it to somebody to be like, what is this? Is this real? Is this going to work? And now we're kind of over that validation hurdle.
Yeah, I'm sure it's nice to get there for sure, where it's like, okay, somebody's like heard of it, or they've heard a friend talking about it, or they've seen something about it online. So it's not as much like, I guess, like a little bit easier to sell them on it than if they've never heard of it before.
Yeah. And to me, the real key throughout all of this, it's probably applicable to all your listeners, is to talk about it all the time and don't be afraid. So I hear so many people when they're starting their business that they don't want to talk about it because either they're shy, they don't have confidence in themselves or their business idea, they're afraid that people, won't buy in, or they're afraid somebody's going to steal their idea. And, you just have to put all of that aside because none of it is true. You are capable. Nobody's going to laugh at you. It's going to be great. Don't you worry. And certainly nobody's going to steal your idea because if you're not doing it, nobody else is going to do it either. And you really just need to take every opportunity to communicate about what you're doing, because that's how you build advocacy and you get people on board and you're able to tailor your idea. Can you see? Pardon me. I have a little cold here.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. And you're able to, understand feedback from people as you talk about it. You're able to really tune your idea to the market and see what's going to fit and what people need, and have a back and forth conversation with your potential consumers and then your actual consumers to know what's working and not working. Don't be afraid to talk, and don't be afraid to get negative feedback either. That's just useful information that you take in, you shift and you change and you move it forward again.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good piece of advice. And I think that that's definitely something I've experienced personally and also heard from people that I work with on the yoga teaching side of things is like, I have this great idea, but I just feel like nervous to put it out there. And I mean, it is nerve-wracking to put ourselves out there, but I think from what I've heard you say, like you believed so much in this product and how it could change, people's experience with meditation and just society as a whole so much that was like such a big driving factor of just like continuing to do the work.
Yeah. And when I'm standing on stage, I'm typically not nervous because it's not about me, it's about the information. And so, if you say like, oh, I'm nervous to put it out there because, I'm nervous for people to look at me or for people to judge me for it. It's not about you, it's about the idea. And you have to believe that the thing you're doing is in service and that the thing you're doing is going to make somebody's life better. And every time you talk about it, it's in service of that other person that it's going to help. And so it's now, now part of your mission and duty to get it out. It's no longer a question of like, oh, will people judge me? It's like, no, we have to talk about this because this is going to help the world and we have to do this, or I have to do this. And so I'm communicating to you because it's going to make something better. It becomes an act of service.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And so as you've seen the product grow, can you talk a little bit about like how the business side of things has shifted? Like I know you mentioned that you guys have a much bigger team now and all that sort of thing, but what else has been kind of, I guess, like an interesting learning experience from like growing this product globally?
Sure. So, at first it was just the three of us. And so you have to do everything. And then as you hire more staff, as we started to get funds, at first it was investment and then revenue. As you start to get funds, you need to hire staff and you need to be able to delegate and fully trust the people who are working for you to do what it is that they're doing and not micromanage. That was an initial lesson for me for sure. And then at a certain point, when I was a CEO for 7 years, and then at maternity leave, we were 45 people in the company. I actually stepped down from maternity leave because I made the choice that said, I've never run a big company before. This is not, my skill set has grown dramatically, but there is somebody who knows how to do this better to take it to the next stage. And B, I'm having a baby and I want to be able to focus on having a family and living my life. So I shifted my role in the company, which was a huge shift to the ego also, because you're used to being the CEO, you're used to running everything. And now you're trusting somebody else to run what was your first baby. That was also a big lesson, like when to do things and when to let somebody else do them and when to make the choices that are healthiest for you in your life, to do the things that you want. So lots of lessons there, both personally and professionally, about what is the best use of your time and the best fit for you and the best work-life balance. So very happy with the choice that I made. And very quickly it became totally fine that I was no longer the CEO and had a different role in the company.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure that it was like really meaningful to be able to spend that time on maternity leave with your baby also.
Absolutely. And when I came back, I became the chief evangelist, getting to share with people about meditation and its power rather than the person who runs the whole company. And again, like, you have that moment of like, but my ego. And then you have that moment of like, it's absolutely okay. It doesn't mean anything. Totally
Yeah.
doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting because I feel like, so much of it comes full circle. Like I'm sure your meditation practice was really integral in helping you to make those decisions and then be okay with those decisions and help with the ego side of things as well.
Absolutely. My meditation practice could see the emotional reaction that my body was having. It's like, that's an emotional reaction. Let's see what that emotional reaction is based in, because it's not based in reality. It's based in the past. So let's understand how the past is driving your behavior and doesn't need to move forward into the future.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And so something you mentioned before we were actually officially recording is that Muse is in yoga studios. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. So, Muse is used in several yoga studios in North America and in Canada to run Muse meditation classes. It was first done at Wanderlust Hollywood. They no longer have any meditation classes, but for a long time they had a standing Muse class on their roster. And I've taught some Muse classes there, and now there are several other studios that use Muse to do regular classes. So the studio will have a complement of like 10 or 15 muses, and people will come to the Muse class. They'll put on the headband. The teacher will narrate the class. So they'll do a Dharma talk, they'll lead meditations, but during the whole thing, the participants are either getting real-time feedback with the volume on and hearing their own mind to be able to come into their focused attention more effectively, or the teacher will narrate and they're just using the device to track. And then after the fact, people can look at their data and share with one another. And then the magic happens when you go around and everybody starts talking about their experience and talking about what they noticed as a result of getting feedback, and then triggering somebody else in the class to realize, oh yeah, I had that same experience too, or it reminds me of when this happened. And you start to have this kind of new lens or new mirror or new angle through which to talk about your meditation practice and the process of it. And it can be super powerful.
Yeah, that's really awesome to hear. I love the idea of like being able to get some feedback like right away on what's happening, because I can definitely relate to kind of what you were talking about with your meditation journey, like feeling like your mind's all over the place and not really knowing if you're doing it right. And I've definitely experienced moments, especially through like teacher trainings and learning more about meditation, where I'm like, okay, this is the thing. But it feels like it's like something that slips away quite quickly, especially if I'm like busy or my mind's really busy. And so, yeah, I love the idea of being able to have that instant feedback that's almost like a reminder to like, okay, the thoughts are there. Let's keep breathing. Let's settle a little bit. Let's come back to, what we're here to do, because so often it can be like 10 minutes of sitting, running through your to-do list, which is not necessarily the point of meditating.
Exactly. And that's an example I commonly give. Yeah, you've got it.
Yeah, for sure. That's my most common one. It's like, yeah, listening to something and then all of a sudden I realize I'm just going through my to-do list and I'm not focusing on my breath or my body or anything like that. And I'm like, oh, okay, let's come back to what I'm actually trying to do here. So yeah, that's really cool to hear.
That to-do list can be really sticky. And so you're on the to-do list, and to-do lists are actually a thing that commonly comes up because they're really rewarding. They're like kind of bullet points. You can check stuff off. You feel like you're getting stuff done. It feels progressive. And so your mind can want to keep going back there because there's a rewarding sensation to that like organization of a to-do list. And what you need to do is like recognize and say, nope, we're not going there, back to the breath. Nope, we're not going there, back to the breath. So what Muse lets you do is Muse lets you know, like, instantly within half a second, like, nope, you've wandered away. And so you can start to really sensitively understand the quality of your mind when it wanders, what it feels like the first moment it does it, so that you can catch it much more effectively. And then when you're going throughout your life, it's much easier and faster every time your mind wanders to say, oh, that's a wander. I know it. Back to what I'm doing, back to the class I'm teaching, back to the students that I'm helping right now, back to the lecture I'm listening to, back to the kid I'm focusing on, whatever it is, because most of us go through our life in autopilot. And the point of that time on the mat is to teach us what to do with our minds and bodies throughout the rest of our day. And so having that thing that really makes it easy to help you understand, when you've wandered, makes it so much easier throughout the rest of your day to be like, yep, now I've got it. Now I know what to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's amazing. I really love that. And so you mentioned at the beginning of our interview that now there's a sleep product. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? I'm like super into tracking sleep and looking at that data. So I'm definitely curious to hear about this.
Awesome. Yeah, it's incredibly exciting. So we just released a new device January 5th. So I don't know when this is going to air, but would have been released quite soon after this. And we've been working on it for the last year. So one of the things that we noticed is that most people were meditating either in the morning or in the evening, and that their evening meditation they're often using to help them fall asleep. And so we recognized that we could build a purpose-built device that was designed to help you fall asleep faster. So whereas Muse 1 and Muse 2, Muse 1 gives you feedback on your brain, Muse 2 gives you feedback on your heart, breath, and body, in addition to your brain. Whereas they are kind of like little headbands that you wear that tuck behind your ears, but they're hard to sleep on. We built this beautiful purpose-built device that is super comfy, that you can lie down with and actually fall fast asleep with. So as you put on the Muse S, it gives you guided meditations to lull you into slumber. And in addition to the guided meditations, it actually creates a soundscape from your body. So it gives you real-time feedback from your heart, your mind, and your movement that creates this beautiful responsive soundscape that actually is designed to lull you into sleep. So in the same way that when you're a little kid, you might have a parent read you a bedtime story. And as they started to see you, slow your breath, they would start to slow their words. And as they started to see your eyes flutter, they would start to lower their voice in order to help you fall asleep with their guidance. So in the same way, Muse S can actually track your brain and body as you're falling asleep and shift and change the soundscape to help move you into sleep more effectively.
Wow, that's amazing technology. That's so
Thank
cool.
you. We're so excited about it. We've been working with guided meditations for the last few years. So we have this big library of content of guided meditations, and we are able to give you feedback after the fact when you listen to the guidance. And now this is the first time that we're able to actually give you the real-time feedback during a guided meditation and have the content and the sounds that you're listening to during your guided meditation actually change with the movements of your mind and body to help you get deeper into the process. It's so cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then does it continue throughout your entire sleep, or at some point does it stop, or how does that work?
So right now we're releasing the feature that helps you fall asleep because we feel like that's the most useful for people. But we're also currently working with a research lab for the overnight tracking, and that will be released at some point in 2020. So if you get it now for the go to sleep feature, you'll just get all of the updates as it comes. So you'll get tracking through the night, and then we continue to build features. Literally every few weeks we release something new.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's kind of cool. I mean, it makes me think about how it's like almost like, could track what's happening in our brains and our bodies like 24 hours a day. You could start getting this understanding of what's like going on with you throughout the night, throughout the day, all that good stuff, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. So the insight that we had was, people practice during the day of meditation to help you manage your mind and relax your body. And then when you go to sleep at night, you can apply the same principles that you've learned during your daytime meditation to then help you potentially sleep more effectively, which then allows you to wake up the next day with a clearer mind, with an ability to, during your meditation and throughout your day, understand and manage your mind and body more effectively, which you can then apply during the night. So it really is this daytime, nighttime process. So, other sleep trackers, for example, like, okay, you're tracking your sleep, but what are you really doing? Maybe they're giving you recommendations to have less caffeine or shift your alcohol and all these behavioral recommendations, which can create, behavior or environment that's going to help you sleep better. But part of the important trick to that is what is going on in your mind and how are you using these tools of mental and physiological regulation to help bring your whole body into sleep in a way that's going to be really deep and restful for you. So as we manage our mind in meditation, as we shift away from our negative thoughts, as we're able to come to a clear place, you're also preparing your body by breathing more deeply, by slowing your heart rate, by reducing your cortisol levels, which then can allow you to move into a sleep that is deeper and more restful because your body and mind are in a prepared state to sleep effectively. So it really is a 24-hour cycle of understanding during the day, applying at night, improving the next day, applying better the next night, and on and on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. It's just such incredible technology, and it's so cool to hear about it and how it was developed. So I'm definitely excited to share links for all this stuff, including the new sleep tracker. Do you have any final business tips for anyone who's listening, or even I'll say like any final meditation tips for anyone that's listening?
So any final business tips, I would say, do not be afraid. I think if I've learned any lessons throughout this, 10-year journey, it is about the role that fear plays in our life. And fear is this false feeling and the generation of false thoughts that cause us to be held back in our minds, in our bodies, in our love, and in our life. And when you can understand that, the thoughts that are holding you back are just fear, when you can understand that the sensations in your body when you get up on stage, they're saying like, don't do this, are just fear. When the things that are keeping you from like reaching out to another human who's probably there to want to help you, or if they say no, it doesn't matter, you'll just move to the next person, you'll thank them gracefully, move on. The damage that our ego is afraid of, all of these things are just fear. And when you're able to recognize that it's just fear and affirm and validate that fear does not need to hold you back, on the other side of that is freedom in every aspect of your life. In your business life, in your personal life, in your meditation practice, in your procrastination. Procrastination is only fear. When you're able to recognize it and say, it's okay, I'm feeling a sensation or a thought, it's just a feeling or a thought. I see it. Thank you for bringing it up. I don't need you right now. I can move beyond. You're able to take greater risks in your business. You're able to put yourself out there. You're able to dream bigger. You're able to, reach out to the network that you actually need to move you forward. You're able to, stop being on Instagram or watching television or whatever fear-based procrastination you're engaging with because you're afraid of, any of the feelings that might be associated with doing something wrong. When you're able to put that aside, freedom is on the other side.
Mm-hmm. That's such a good tip. And it's actually kind of funny since we're just coming out of the holidays, my husband and I both recognize like, oh, we're watching so much TV and like, it's just not a healthy habit that we want to be doing, especially on work nights. And so we made a pact that we don't watch TV on weekdays anymore. And we've been doing it for a couple of weeks. And it's been so good to get out of that habit of just like, exactly like you're talking about, like procrastinating, sending that email or procrastinating, dealing with that thing that maybe feels scary that like, we've built up in our minds. It's actually not that scary and all that sort of stuff. And it's been such a positive shift. So on a small scale, I can definitely like affirm that's an important reminder.
Yeah. When we sit there and we watch television, we're doing a thing that's a little bit rewarding. But ultimately it's a thing that we feel is safe. And it's not that sending the email is unsafe or working is unsafe, but we feel like watching television is safer. And we need to say, it's okay. Like, I don't need the safety blanket. Like, this is not protecting me from anything, frankly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it doesn't
Actually,
like feel, it doesn't feel good, like it doesn't, when you look back on your week, those aren't the types of things that you're like, that was a major win this week, at least not for me.
Yeah. The major wins are when you put yourself out there. The major wins are when you live.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely.
I'm so excited for everybody to kind of, find those times when you might be maybe choosing to not live as fully because it feels safer, and to say it's okay. I can go there because the living is actually just as safe, actually better, actually more rewarding, actually takes you further.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's an amazing tip. So thank you for sharing that. And do you have anything on the meditation side of things that you want to add before we wrap up?
The best way to start, so there's so many different forms of meditation. I've primarily been referring to focused attention, which is what we teach you in Muse. But, recognize the times in your life doing other practices when you are meditating. So, validate yourself in your meditation practice. Most people often are like, oh, I suck at meditation. That's not good for me. I'm not good at it. Look for the times when you are good at it, because when we meditate, most of us aren't quote unquote good at it all the time. So don't feel bad about it. Meditation is a non-judgmental experience. So if you're sitting there and you have 1,000 thoughts, totally cool. All of our minds wander. That's what our minds are there to do. If it wanders, totally fine. Just bring it back to the breath. It'll wander again. Totally fine. That's what all our minds do. Just choose to come back to the breath. So, once you're adding that intentionality to it, you're now engaging in the act of meditating on purpose. So validate the things that work. Don't worry about the stuff that doesn't work. Just keep coming back to the here and now and the things that are working for you.
Yeah, I love that tip. And I think that's definitely something I've heard the most as a yoga teacher, like things like I'm too tight to stretch or too inflexible to do yoga. My mind's too busy to meditate. And I feel like those to me are like, well, you're not going to be good at it as soon as you do it. It is a practice. And I think that it's a reminder that, the practice becomes a little bit more comfortable the more that we do it. So it's a good reminder for me as well in the moments where I'm like, oh, I really suck at this meditation right now.
Yeah, don't worry about it. We all suck at meditation. That's why we all keep practicing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, having a meditation practice has been one of the most influential things in my life. So definitely not going to stop, even in the moments where it feels really challenging and not so great.
Yep. And just remember that you are still fully loved in all of those moments, when it's good, when it's bad, when it's challenging, when it's easy, when you're frustrated, when you're not. You are still a fully worthwhile, amazing, beautiful human being who is fully loved.
Absolutely.
Even
I love
if it
that.
doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, for sure. Amazing. This conversation has been so awesome. I could pick your brain for hours, but I want to be respectful of your time. So last question for you is, where can people go to learn more about you? And then also, where can they go to learn about Muse?
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram at Ariel's Musings, or Facebook, Ariel Garten Muse. And if you want to check out Muse, you can go to choosemuse.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today, Ariel. It's been so awesome getting to chat with you and pick your brain about meditation and your business and all that good stuff.
Thank you. My sincere pleasure.
All right, friends, I hope that you enjoyed that episode of the podcast as much as I did, and that you are geeking out on the science of meditation and also the business side of this. There's so much good stuff here. Before we wrap up the episode, I wanted to quickly remind you that my consultation schedule is open once again. I announced it last week on the podcast, and I am so excited to have my calendar be open again. It has been mostly closed for the last year due to a lot of stuff that I had on the go and just not feeling like I had the room and the capacity to take on too many new clients. But I am super excited to be opening that calendar back up again and to be able to work with you guys on your yoga businesses. Things that I really love to have conversations about are starting yoga businesses, setting up systems, figuring out how to set goals and actually take action on them. I love the strategy piece of a yoga business. So if you are struggling with any of that, I would love to work with you. And you can head on over to mbomyoga.com/ yoga.com/consulting to find that information. To find show notes and links from this episode of the podcast, you can head on over to mbomyoga.com. And then you can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at Mastering the Business of Yoga. And you can join the private Facebook community at Yoga Business Badasses. And I would love it if you joined us in the private Facebook community so that we can talk more one-to-one. We can engage more as a smaller group. And then, of course, I've been doing the live Facebook conversations every single week, and I would absolutely love if you could come join that conversation and be a part of that. All right, that's all for now. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Namaste.